Hello, everybody. Thanks for the intro, Jay. That was very kind of you. Um, so, my name is Mark Berthelsen. I am employed at Allianz Life in Golden Valley, but I actually live in Oregon. So, for me, it's still morning. So, if I say good morning every once in a while, that's why. Um, so, what I wanted to do today for this session was just to throw together kind of a grab bag of different things. I've been fortunate enough to be working with Storyline since pretty much its inception. I was one of the original beta testers. And so I've been doing it for quite a while, and I love the tool. Um, and the Articulate does a great job doing updates and improving the tool. So there's always something new to learn with it, which as a learning professional, I love. So I'm hoping that maybe some of these tips and tricks that I've got for you will be helpful just in terms of your developing courses. Now, some of the things that we'll talk about are pretty simple things that I think newer users will really benefit from. There's also I've got some that are probably more veteran kind of tips. So I think no matter what your level of experience with Storyline is, I think there'll be some things in here for you. You may have just noticed in the chat that we're going to do, or that we are recording the session, so you can go back and review it later if you'd like. We are also going to do kind of an add-on. There are a couple of things that I wanted to cover that I think are pretty cool that we're probably not going to have time today on this call to cover. So we'll do a little bit of an extra for you. So if you go out and check out the recording in a couple of days, we'll have some extra stuff. So that being said, we are going to dive right in. Okay, so I figured for the presentation, I would just use Storyline as our presentation tool instead of doing PowerPoint or something like that. So this whole presentation was put together in Storyline. I'm going to talk about some tips and then do some demos on how to use some of them as we go along. Our agenda kind of got it broken down into a couple different categories. We've got a few that I think are good for organizing and simplifying your work with Storyline, some things that are quick hits that'll just take a minute or two to cover, and then the just for fun, that's going to be some that additional content that'll be available on demand later. So starting off with organizing and simplifying, these are all things that I've done or have used in the past that I think really do help to make Storyline use a little bit tighter, a little bit easier. The first one I wanted to mention is text-to-speech for captions. At my company, we do caption everything that we do. We have, as I'm sure a lot of you do, people who are hearing impaired. But even beyond that, if you're familiar with universal design, having captions available for people if they're in a loud space or whatever can be really, really useful. Captioning can take a lot of time, however, because if you're copying and pasting the text into the captions, it takes a while to work. So a workaround that I found that I think works quite well is to use text-to-speech to create the captions. Then I replace the text-to-speech with the actual audio that I'm going to use. And then you just go into the closed caption editor to match the actual recording. Okay, so here's how it works. So we've got a slide. This just happens to be an introductory slide. And if I want to add the audio, the first thing that I'll do is use text to speech. You can get to, there's several different menus. I should probably go through the actual ribbon to do it. So insert, and then go to audio and text to speech. Then I'm actually going to switch the narrator. They have different narrators with different accents, different languages. There's some actually pretty cool text to speech options in here. I usually use Matthew as the one that I use because his voice matches up a little bit more closely to the cadence of my voice, so it works pretty well. Then we generate the closed captions and copy from slide notes. So that just takes the notes that are on the slide and then uses those to create the closed caption, or the text to speech and closed caption. So insert, we now have an audio track on the slide. All right. So once you've got your text to speech audio track, we do actually have, I need to reduce this just a little bit because that control bar is in my way. So now I've got captions that have been created for me based on the text. So pretty easy. So the next thing that I do is go to that audio track, and I'm going to replace it with my actual audio, which I've pre-recorded. And so there's my audio track. So I've now replaced it with actual audio. So now I can go back to my closed caption editor. And all I have to do is sync up the closed caption with the actual audio. One thing I will suggest is when you do this, it oftentimes works best to work from the end backwards. So for instance, the next button. To begin, click the next button, and they'll just go through and move things around. Now, sometimes like this script closed captioning split it kind of weird. So sometimes I'll play around with a little bit just to make it a little bit more logical, but all of the text is there. I just have to shuffle things around. Pretty easy. All right, so that is, let's say that, the easy way to get your captions going. All right, next one, using states instead of groups. Grouped objects are fantastic. I certainly use them a lot. However, sometimes with grouped objects, things can move independently. They get separated, have resizing issues. If you're using them as some sort of a link or for a trigger, that doesn't necessarily allow you to use the entire group for it. So sometimes it can get a little bit cumbersome to use groups. So one of the things that I like to do, particularly if I'm going to use something as a button, is to use the edit states functionality and kind of create my own image or icon or whatever using states. So basically, you have your image, you go into the states view, you're going to modify or edit the states, do whatever changes you want, and then it creates a single object on the timeline that has everything bundled together. So let's look at that. So I've got this thing that's going to be a button, and I want to have this picture on the button, but I'm going to specifically, I want it to appear when you hover over the button. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to start by copying that image and then go into the timeline for this button. We'll edit states. And for this one, like I said, I want to have this appear when we're hovering over it. So I'm going to do a new state and use the built-in hover. And we now have new hover state. Now I copied that image earlier. So now all I have to do is paste the image wherever I want it to be. And I'm done. So get that out of the way. So now if I do a quick preview, and previewing always takes a little bit longer when you're using Zoom or WebEx, so bear with me here. All right, so now when I hover over the object, I have that additional image that appears. Now, if you want to take it even a step further, when you do this, you can also add animations. So maybe I want, when it zooms, for that image to, oh, let's just make it fade. That's easy. Okay. So the same thing. Now I've added the animation to just that image within the state. So now when I hover over, you get the animation as well. So just kind of a cool way to be able to add some additional dynamic elements to your training and have it look even more professional. All right. So next up is button sets. And if you're not familiar with button sets, these I think are really cool. They particularly help when you are trying to force a single decision on something. Now, you can obviously do that with quizzing, but sometimes if you're building a check for knowledge kind of slide that's not actually quizzing, or you want people to choose a specific um, uh, choice in order to branch, this can really help you out. So basically, the idea is that when you choose a selection of buttons, you can turn those into a button set where in that set, only one thing can be chosen at a time. So for instance, if I preview this, so it will, this second set that I have here is a button set, so only one thing can be chosen at a time. Probably the thing that I've used it the most for at my office is we support our learning department. Our HR supports a number of different parts of the company, and so we have one set of training that covers a number of different companies, but different resources are located in different places. So at the beginning of the training, I make people choose what company they work for, and then I can set up variables and triggers so that at different points they receive the information that's specific to them. So doing it is really easy. So I've got 4 icons here For some of you, these probably look familiar. I decided to go Monopoly for this one. Um, with these, I'm setting it up so that I've got both the normal and an orange selected version of the icons. So if you want to do that, I've just used an icon images that I downloaded from the content library. I'm going to edit the state and create a new selected state and add that. Then we're going to replace this with the orange version of the picture. So I'm going to replace picture from file. I've already created the images. So there's our orange hat. And done. So now I've got the images with both the normal and the selected state. So now all I have to do is select all of those and create a button set. And we're going to create it as a new set. And can give it a name. And now it's going to have that same functionality that we saw on the previous slide, where you can only select one of them. Now, the reason that I decided to show you this version of the button set with these icons is another way that you can use this is at the beginning of training, you can have people choose a specific icon that they want to use as their avatar or something like that. You can set it up so that you can force a choice of a single one of these and then reutilize that same image throughout the slideshow or throughout the presentation or throughout the course. All right. So that is button sets. So the next piece here is the media library. And the media library has been around for a little while yet. To be perfectly honest, I hadn't used it a whole lot until recently. Uh, I didn't really understand what the benefit of it was, but they've added functionality and done some things with it that I think have actually made it really useful. You can use it to rename images. You can add notes. If you're creating accessible courses, you can use it to add alternate text to images, things like that. So there actually are some really, really powerful uses for it. But the specific one that I want to talk about today is you can directly edit images using the media library. So instead of having to go out, open up separate software, make your changes, and then re-import the image, they've made it really, really easy to just do image editing directly from the media library. So let's take an example here. So I've got two examples. One is a JPEG and one is a PNG. Let's start with the JPEG. Now, depending on the format of the image, that'll drive kind of what editing software you're going to use. So let's take a look. I'm going to right click on it on this image and then show in media library. You can also use the view media library from the ribbon, but since I know that it's this specific image that I want to work with, I'm just going to open it directly from the image. So down here in the lower right, you've got this edit button. Click on that. It will give you a list of the different image editing software that you've got available on your computer. With a JPEG, I find that the easiest ones to use are either Paint or Snagit Editor. So I'm just going to pick Snagit Editor for now. Say that I wanted to crop this image so that I just had the balloon. So that I did just a quick edit, and now when I close that and save it, the image that stays in Storyline now is that cropped image. So easy to make the change. If you have something like a PNG file, I found that I use Photoshop quite a bit for editing images. It doesn't really work with the JPEG, but it does work with PNGs. The other thing with PNGs is you can maintain that kind of alpha transparency so that you can see what's behind the image. So if you have a PNG, you can use Photoshop to do editing on that image as well. So let's go ahead and go to Photoshop. And let's say that I wanted to add a little bit of color to some of these windows. And I apologize, I am a geek. I am a proud nerd. Particularly, I'm a big old Doctor Who fan. So yes, you will see lots of references to Doctor Who and the TARDIS. So hopefully there are other people that can appreciate my um, uh, sense of um, nostalgia with Doctor Who. So I just put a little bit of yellow in that light on the top of the image. So now if I close the image, once again, it's going to save that new version of the image. So now on the image on the slide, it's already edited. For those of you that may also be familiar with Adobe Captivate, I know that that's one of the features that I, back when I did use Captivate, that was a feature that I really liked, was being able to edit things directly from Captivate. Now, Articulate Storyline allows you to do much the same thing. All right. So let me just pause for just a second, see if there are any quick questions in the chat.
There was only one outstanding question, and it was about the button states.
Okay.
Carol asked, can you edit the normal state so it's a single image also?
Absolutely, you can. Yep. You can do it with the normal state. In fact, you can do it so that there's only a single state and edit that image so that it's all part of one image. Or you can do it like I did, where it's a separate state.
It looks like we also have a quick question came in from Michael just now. Can you copy? So actually, Judy's been chiming in with other tips. So thank you, Judy, for all your help in the chat. And she brought up the fact that if you edit the image in the media library, it will make changes across the entire project.
Yes, thank you, thank you. That is a really important thing to be aware of. Let me just go back here, back into the media library. If you have something where you need to change it on one slide but not another, you can also just imp, no,
Well,
I was
Michael's
thinking that there was
question
a,
is,
yeah.
could you make a copy of it first in the media library and then edit the copy?
Yes, that's where I was going with that and got myself confused. So
It's
sorry
okay.
about that. Yes, absolutely. So make a copy first and then just edit the single copy. If you probably the easiest way to do it then is to go ahead and rename the copies just so that you keep things a little bit clearer in your media library.
Great. Well, those were the only two questions so far. And we are about halfway on time, just so you know, Mark,
Perfect.
moving forward.
Perfect. All right. So now we've got a few quick hits. And here again, some of these are probably things that are no-brainers for some of you. Some are probably brand new for some of you, but I think they're all things that are worth talking about. So the first one here is format and animation painters. These save a lot of time because you can copy formatting from one object to another. You can copy formatting of text from one text box or one object to another. But there's also an animation painter that I think a lot of people aren't really aware of or familiar with. Uh, so you can copy animation, whether it's a set of animation or movement animation. You can easily copy it from one object to the next object. Um, when you're using the animation painter or the format painter, those controls are up in the ribbon. You just select the object that you want to copy from, and then you can go up to Format Painter, or if you're doing animation, the Animation Painter. So it's really pretty easy. Now, another thing that not everybody is aware of is that when you click on the Format Painter one time, it will copy to one object. If you double click, it will make that control persistent so that you can copy it onto multiple objects, which is also pretty cool. So let's take a look at how that works. So I've got this image, and I want to copy that format onto this other image. So you hit the Format Painter once, and it just copies everything over. So all of the special features, the coloring, pretty much the whole thing. Now it works with text boxes as well. So if you do Format Painter, and this time I'm going to double click, then I can click on each of the selections of text and have that change. Now to turn it off, you can either click someplace that there isn't an object or click on Format Painter and it changes it. Now you can also have it just change the text. So in this case, I've got the red text and I want the text in the other boxes to be red. So I'll double click on the Format Painter, and this time it shows you the text icon or cursor. So then you just highlight the text that you want to change and it changes that text. So pretty easy, pretty cool, but it does save a lot of time. Next thing, working with the timeline. Now, if you're using Storyline, obviously you know what the timeline is and how to work with it. A couple of things that people may not always think about, though, is that you can do some things to make the timeline more effective for you. So the two things in particular I wanted to mention, one is changing the zoom and the other is undocking. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So you can resize here to make the timeline larger, but I've got a lot of objects on here. I can't see everything at once, so it kind of hampers my ability to see what's on the screen. But you can undock the entire thing. And I have a dual monitor setup, so I just slide the timeline over onto my second monitor, and then I can have all of the real estate on the screen for my slide view, but then have the full real estate for my timeline as well. Just makes things a little bit easier for me to work with. To redock it, just hit the redock button and it bounces it back down to the bottom. The other thing that people don't always remember to do is you can change the zoom on your timeline. So this one's 83 seconds long, so it's a relatively long slide. If I'm trying to do stuff back and forth, or if I'm trying to move an object from here further along in the slide, I can certainly slide it, but I can also change the zoom so that I can slide it really easily. So another one of those ways that you may not always think about doing it, but it does actually make it a little bit easier to move things around. All right, next quick hit, pasting assets. And this one was a bit of a revelation when I learned about this. It it works really, really well. And again, it's a great time saver. If you have something that you have that's going to be on multiple slides within a scene, you can actually copy it from one slide, select all of the rest of the slides, and then paste it onto all of those remaining slides. And you can actually do that uh, with triggers as well. So I've got this slide as my main slide or my first slide, and then I've got 3 blank slides here. All I have to do is select the object and then copy it, whether you use Control C or you can copy it from up above, and then select all of the slides that you want it to go on, and then you can paste it all at once. And now you can see it's on all of the slides. And like I said, the same thing happens when you're talking about triggers. So say that I wanted to copy this trigger. I can, again, use the copy function, and it's not on any of these 3 slides right now. So I'll select all of them and paste, and the trigger is on all of the slides. Now, because we're dealing with an object that's on a different slide, it is going to require that you add in your object, and in this case, I have it as a movement, so I have to add in a path, but it does make it a lot easier to not have to start from scratch every time or copy and paste it to all of the slides. Okay, next up, keyboard shortcuts. And here, this is another case where a lot of people probably use some of these keyboard shortcuts, but I've found some of them to be particularly useful. So I'll just mention a couple of them, and I'll let you check some of these out on your own. I am really, really, really bad about remembering to save things, and I'll talk about that more in just a moment. So having a keyboard shortcut to save my project definitely comes in handy. Just to every once in a while, I just have to remember to do Control S to save my project, which is easier, I think, than having to go up to the ribbon to do it. Another one that I use a lot is this Control F, or I'm sorry, Control Enter. So when you hit Control and Enter, let's click on an image here. When you hit Control and Enter, it will open up the format picture box for you. So again, it's a little thing, but anything I can do to kind of save some time is really useful. Same thing with Control T. That's another one that I love. If I want to enter or add a text box onto the slide, it's just Control T and get a text box. There are a couple of ways to kind of customize your keyboard shortcuts as well, which I think is pretty handy. So the way that this works is to use your quick access bar up at the top, and that will correspond with a keyboard shortcut. So for instance, if I press the Alt key and 1, that will save my project. So you can see that now it's saving. So because that's the first icon in the quick access bar. If I do Alt and 5, it will open up the insert audio dialog so that I can insert audio onto the slide, because the audio icon is the 5th icon in the quick access bar. Now that works with pretty much any function within the system. So let's say that you want to have the survey question be an icon on your quick access bar, if you use Alt and then 6, it's the sixth icon, then you now have a insert survey question shortcut. So I think that's kind of cool. I do use that a lot with inserting pictures and inserting audio. It works great. The other thing that you can do is if you use the Alt key and just press down and hold it for a couple of seconds, notice that now there are letters and numbers that have appeared. After hitting the Alt key now, if I hit, let's choose this freeform question has a K. If I hit the K key, it's going to, although that didn't seem to work for me. So let's try that again. Oh, I'm sorry. It wasn't for that button. It was for the ribbon first. Sorry about that. So if I hit the, let's say that I wanted to do a transition, I can hit the K key, opens up the transitions ribbon, and then I've got all of my options here. If I now hit the T, because that's the letter that's associated with this, it opens up that dialog and I can choose whatever I want. So just another way that you can get to some of the different functionality quickly without necessarily having to mouse. All right, next quick hit. So auto recovery. Now, hopefully everybody has auto recovery already set up, but if you don't, I would very, very strongly recommend that you check to make sure that it is set up. Like I said, I am terrible at remembering to save things. I get focused on what I'm doing and just totally blank out on saving things. So auto recovery has saved me literally hours of work. I have mine set to 5 minutes. So I'm just going to enlarge this so that you can see what the screenshots look like. If you go to File and Storyline options, there's the Save Auto Recovery information. You can set it for whatever you want. Like I said, I have it set to 5 minutes just because I don't like losing things. But you can set it for less, you can set it for more, whatever works for you and your workflow. All right. Then find and replace. This is another one of those really basic core functions that people likely use all the time, but you may or may not know that you can also replace fonts using find and replace. So we've got a number of different lines of text here. I can do the normal find and replace and say that I wanted to, I've got some that say dimensions and some that say dimension. So I want it to just read dimension. So if I do find dimensions, and then I can replace it with, if I could spell, that would help. And now I can replace all. I can replace just a single one, in which case all of the usual suspects. So it's now replaced everything. So that's, the basic find and replace, most people I think are aware of, but the replace fonts function has saved me a lot of time too. We happen to have a particular company branded font that we use. So when I'm doing a presentation, most, if not all of the text within that presentation needs to be in that specific font. But sometimes things, if I've copied it from another source or Storyline defaults to its default font, I'll need to replace those fonts. So it makes it really easy. So if I'm going to replace, it lists all of the fonts that are currently in the project. So let's say that I have this Algerian font, these 2 lines, and I want to replace it with our Allianz Neo font. Just select the font and it changes it. So really, really easy way to help you make sure that you've got consistent fonts within a project, that you haven't had some weird copying issues or things like that. All right. So that then
Mark,
brings
we
me
we
to
do have a couple of questions if you want to pause for just a moment.
absolutely.
Sure. So Catherine said back when you were talking about copying across multiple slides,
Mhm.
is there a way to control where in the timeline the object is pasted into?
It will paste into the timeline at the same place as the original. So wherever you have that first image located on the timeline, that's where it's going to paste in. So for instance, with this one, the first image I put in, the original one comes in at 1 second and remains until the end of the slide. So all of the ones that pasted in are in the same location with the same uh, uh, length. So um, if I did that object, let's just copy that object again. Grab it, there we go. And this time we will make it come in at 3 seconds and last for 3 seconds. So if I copy it and then paste onto the other slides, it will paste in using the same uh, um, timing as that original.
Great. And then Angie asked about for the find and replace feature, does it also find and replace, does it look in the slide notes? Does that work?
It does, which is really helpful too. Yeah, so it looks at any text on the slide or in the slide notes.
Wonderful. Kelsey, along the same line, says, does it find and replace? Oops, I just lost. Does it find and replace only within the current slide or across the whole scene?
Actually, across the whole project.
Mm,
So not just the slide, not just the scene, but everything.
great. Carol, I'm going to read her question. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe you'll understand it. I don't know if I
Sure.
do, but is there a way to organize triggers by cue point order?
That's a good question. I don't believe so because the triggers are based on the objects within the slide, not on um, the cue point trigger that created them. So I haven't played around with that specifically, but I don't recall any way to be able to do that.
Okay. Well, that was our last question in the chat. I would say we have about probably 8 more minutes.
All right, terrific. So there, like I said, I'm going to add a couple of. No, I don't want to. I'm going to have a video recording of a couple of extra things. Specifically, one is creating a backdoor. And what I mean by that is if you're like me and you have a big project that you're trying to test out, maybe quiz functionality at the end to ensure that that everything is working that it's the way that it's supposed to. You know, once you get it into the LMS or into Articulate Review or wherever, it's a pain to have to go through your entire course. And I do a lot of the audio recording for the stuff that I create. And so I find it very painful to have to go through the entire course and listen to myself over and over. So what I've done is created a backdoor so that I can either jump over to the next slide without having to wait for a slide to complete, or jump to the end of the project, like right before the quiz, so that I can test out just that functionality without having to go through the entire quiz. It's really, really easy using a variable and a couple of triggers and hotspots, and I'll demonstrate exactly how to do that in that video. Another thing is changing sliders to an icon. There's just some really cool, fun functionality that you can do to sliders within the project to change them to an icon and use them in different ways. So I'll show you that. I think since we've got just a couple of minutes, the one that I'll show you now, though, and I'll record this. You'll have this in the recording of this project or of this presentation. The newest thing that Storyline has come out with is 360 images. If you've played around with it at all, it's really kind of fun. And I'm starting to think of ways that we could use it. It's actually still in the beta testing stage right now, but it is available in Storyline to check out the beta testing. What this is a way to kind of create a 3D model of something and allow people to move within that model. So if you think about the Google Street View in Google Maps or interactive house or apartment tours, that's what we're talking about here. Uses a particular kind of image called an equirectangular image that you can get through a lot of different image providers. There's still relatively small numbers of them compared to regular images, but you can definitely find them. We have a Getty Images subscription, so that's where I've been getting them for this test project, but you can get them other places as well. So this is an example of an equirectangular image, kind of looks all warped and distorted, but once it's in this 360 images functionality, it looks really cool. So I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like. With the with this 360 images, you can put in markers, very similar to the regular markers in Storyline, where you can click on things and interact with them. You can move around within the space, up, down, all around. You can also set up hotspots. So you can have an entire area. You can even embed images within those markers. So there's a bunch of really cool things that you can do with it. Because it's so new, I haven't had a chance to actually use it for anything yet, but I think that there are a lot of really cool possible uses for it. Setting it up is super easy, so I'm just going to do one really quick. You insert 360 images, and I've got a map that I'm going to use, so we'll just insert that. And hit the edit 360 images, and now you can edit it. You can add markers. You can add the hotspots, a bunch of different functionality that you can do with it. But you can have people move kind of around the globe this way, which is pretty cool. All right, so I think that is about it for time. I hope that you'll check out the added recordings. I do think that both of the other things that we're going to add to the recordings are pretty cool, and hopefully will be really helpful for you. Other than that, I think any last questions before we wrap up the session today?
Hey, well, people are already taking my end. I wanted people to go to the reactions and figure out if they should give Mark a hand clap, a thumbs up, a wow, a heart, or a ta-da. So I was thinking people should use some of those. So anyway, thank you so much, Mark, and thank you everyone for joining today's session. We will look at having another articulate session before the end of the year here for sure. And the noon to 1 hour seems to work pretty well virtually for most people, and it seems to be getting a nice group of attendance. So please say a thank you or a ta-da or whatever you want to do. The hand clap, I'm going to do a hand clap like this for Mark. Thank you, Mark, for your time today, and thanks all of you for joining us. Have a wonderful, wonderful Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you too for all of the resources that people have put in here. There's some that I'm not familiar with either, so I'm looking forward to checking those out as well. So thanks, everybody. Hello, and welcome to this overflow edition of Shortcuts to Storyline Savvy. As I mentioned in the main presentation, there are a couple of other things that I wanted to show you that I think are really kind of fun and interesting and can save you some time. So let's dive into that. Specifically, I want to talk to you about changing sliders to an icon and why you might want to do that, and kind of how you can use that for some fun effects, and then also how to create a backdoor so that you can jump instantly to a later portion in a training for like testing purposes, things like that. So let's get started with changing sliders. With changing the slider, most of you, I'm sure, have used sliders at some point, or at least are familiar with what they are and how they work. And the pre-built sliders have the little icon or the circle or a square that you can use to slide that slider. But you can change the slider image so that you have something that's more customized to your training or to what you're doing. So it's really easy to do. You just right-click on the slider and then choose Format Shape, choose to replace the picture or texture fill, and then you can either paste something in from the clipboard, or you can go to a file and replace it with just about anything. So I've got an example here. Say that I want to change this and into something a little bit more interesting. I can go into my Format Shape and then Picture or Texture Fill, go to File, and select whatever I want. So we'll pick the Dalek because, as I've mentioned, I'm a bit of a nerd that way. And so now we have a Dalek image. You have some control over the size, so you can adjust that. I find that when I do this, I usually want to use a PNG file because then I can keep the transparency in the background instead of having a white frame around it. But you can use JPEGs or any files as well. I just happen to like having that transparency most of the time, so that's what I've used on all of these examples. Now the user then can slide that icon along the slider however they want. But another use for this is you can set up variables and triggers so that you can use this as a progress bar as well. I'm not going to get into all of the details about how you do that just for time's sake, but there are instructions available on the Articulate eLearning Heroes site that you can use, but it's kind of a cool way to do it, because now let's change another one here. Say that I wanted to change this one to a race car. Now I can have the race car drive along showing progress on a quiz or through a course, however you want to do it. The variables then would make it move along as the variables change. So kind of a fun way to add something a little bit more interesting, a little bit more dynamic into your training. All right, the other thing that I wanted to show you is how to create a backdoor. I use this on just about everything that I do these days just because it really does make my life a lot easier. The idea is that you have 3 hotspots starting on the first page, which you can use to first unlock your backdoor, and then I have one that jumps to the next slide, and I'll put that hotspot on each slide so that I can jump quickly to through each slide without having to sit through my narration or whatever. And then I also have one that will jump automatically to wherever the completion for the slide is going to take, or for the project is going to take place. So this is really helpful when I'm testing, particularly in our LMS, which is sometimes a little bit fussy. It's a way that I can quickly skip over all of the content and just go to the piece that I really need to test, which is how to get completion on the course. So, so it's just some really simple hotspots, one variable, and then I put triggers throughout the course. So let me show you how this works. Now, the first thing that you need to do is to create a variable. All right, so to do that, click on the Manage Project Variables. I happen to have a variable already set up. I just call it backdoor because that's how I think of it. And the default value is false. Then I set up my 3 hotspots in places that I know that I will remember, so I set it up the same way in pretty much every project. I have my activation hotspot up here in the upper right, my jump all the way to completion up here in the upper left, and then a next slide hotspot that I put down here in the lower corner. So let me back up and kind of walk you through this. So the first thing that I do is, once I've got that variable set up, I need to set up a trigger for this hotspot that's going to be my activation trigger. Now, I don't want it to be set up so that anybody just click on it and be able to jump ahead in the course. Obviously, we don't want that. But so what I do is set it up so that it has to be double-clicked to activate the hotspot. The trigger then is when the user double-clicks that hotspot, we set the backdoor value to true. Okay, so the variable backdoor gets the value of true. So now, when I'm running the project, if I double-click that, it will turn on my variable to true. The second hotspot is the one that jumps to completion. So I put that up in the corner, and it's going to be set up so that the trigger will only activate if the backdoor is true. So if you have double-clicked on that first hotspot, then this hotspot will work. So the trigger that I'm using here is when the user clicks the hotspot, jump to wherever you want it to go, in this case to right before my quiz. And then I have the condition set up so that if backdoor, that variable backdoor, has a value of true. Okay. So pretty easy so far. Then the third one, same idea, but in this case, I'm setting it up so that when the user clicks this hotspot, we jump to the next slide, again with the condition that if the backdoor variable value is true. So again, it has to have the activation done before this hotspot will work. Okay. Then in my project, then this I do it so that I have this next slide hotspot I put on every slide within the course so that I can quickly jump to the next slide. And then the other two, I only put on the first slide. You can put it elsewhere through the course if you want, but for me, I usually know at the very beginning, am I going to want to use the backdoor or not? So when I go to that first slide, I can activate it there and jump directly to the end if I want. So let me show you what this looks like now that we've got it all set up. We're just going to do a preview of these selected slides. And for the preview, I've only got 3 slides, but if you've got a 30-minute course with a ton of content, and for me, one of the reasons that I use this is most of the work that I do is compliance-related courses, and so I force people to sit through every slide, so it's not like I can use the next button to just jump ahead. I can't have it set up that way. So I need this back door in order to be able to jump between slides. So you can see that I've got the hotspot here, but I'm clicking on it right now and nothing's happening. And the same thing with the hotspot down here, nothing happening. But over here I've got my activation hotspot. If I single click on it, still nobody can use it, but now I'm going to double clicked on it, and now if I do the next slide one, it jumps me to the next slide. I'm going to just go back to the previous slide again. Now because I'm still in the project, the variable, the activation is still on. So now if I want to go directly to the end right before that quiz, I just click on that hotspot and it takes me right to the transition to quiz slide, so that now I can test using just that quiz without having to sit through all of the content. So I know that that's a really quick overview of how to do this. Hopefully that made sense to you. Like I said, I really do love this particular shortcut, this creating a backdoor, just because I do use it. I do have to do a lot of testing and things, and it just makes things much faster. Allows me to get to the piece that I need to test or view a lot more quickly than having to sit through 25 minutes to get to those last 5 minutes of the course. All right. So that is what I have for you today. I hope that you really enjoyed some of these tips, and I hope that you will use them. If you were able to attend the session in person, then this little add-on is just for you. If you are just watching the video, then I hope that everything made sense here today. But I would love to hear if you're using some of these tips, or if there are other tips and tricks like these that you use that you'd like to share. I'd love to hear about that too. You can reach me at markr.berthelsen@allianzlife.com. And thank you so much for taking the time to watch this today. Bye-bye.